So, how are you feeling about weaning? Weaning can bring up so many different emotions, and that's okay. It's normal. Whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're feeling is valid. Maybe you're feeling really anxious. You're not sure what to expect. You're sort of nervous for the change in your breastfeeding relationship. Maybe you're feeling confused. There is all kinds of information on the internet. Maybe you're not sure where to start. Maybe you talk to some friends and the way that they approach weaning isn't how you want to approach weaning. Maybe you're feeling a little nervous for the unknown, unsure of what comes next, unsure of how your baby is going to take to the decision to wean. Maybe you're excited. Maybe you're ready to close this chapter and move on to the next. Whatever emotions you are feeling right now, they are valid. So today's class is going to walk you through the weaning process. We are going to cover what weaning is. We're going to talk about mother-led or parent-led weaning versus baby-led, what those mean. We're going to cover how to wean from night feedings, how to wean from feeding at the breast, as well as how to wean from pumping and all of the topics in between. You are going to walk away with real strategies to help you through the process of weaning your baby. But before we dig in, I wanted to share my story with you so you know how I got here. So my name is Alex. I am a breastfeeding problem solver and a nutritionist. I am also a mother, and my journey through breastfeeding is what led me to become the CEO and founder of Motherhood Blooms Lactation and create all kinds of online breastfeeding courses to support you through your journey from beginning to end. My journey was filled with challenges. So we faced a tongue tie, we faced a lip tie. Both of those things were leading to a low supply. Both of those things were also leading to very painful breastfeeding. I had damaged nipples, and I also experienced dismissal from care providers. And I actually waited to get help. And looking back, I waited a bit too long, but I did that because I thought my issues were just part of the process. I thought it was supposed to hurt and be uncomfortable and awkward. And the lack of support that I experienced when I did reach out for help is what led me to discovering this passion that I didn't know I had. Through all of those challenges, there were ups and downs, and it really took 10 weeks to work through all of those issues and to be able to exclusively breastfeed my son, as that was my personal goal when it came to feeding my baby. And it was fairly smooth sailing. You know, we did have the teething challenges and the biting and the distracted baby stages, but more or less it was pretty smooth sailing from then on until I started to experience aversion. So I was feeling incredibly uncomfortable in my skin. My son would latch, and immediately my skin felt like it was crawling. I had this itching sensation. It was incredibly irritating. And all I could think of was, I need you off my body. And it was so challenging because this aversion actually lasted several months. I thought it was going to be temporary. There are many reasons something like this can pop up, but it wasn't going away. And I then had to make the really difficult decision to wean my son because my body was just telling me otherwise. As much as I wanted to let him lead the way and tell me when he was done, my body was ready to end our breastfeeding relationship. So what is weaning? Weaning technically begins as soon as solid foods are introduced. And this is because your baby will slowly begin to consume less milk or formula over time. This is also why when you introduce solids, sometimes it's called baby-led weaning. And while we're not eliminating breast milk at that point, it is a very gradual, slow weaning process, essentially. Weaning could mean dropping a few feedings, or it could mean completely stopping. The definition is up to you, and it's up to your goals and what you want to do when it comes to feeding your baby. And that decision to wean can be influenced by a number of things. It can be influenced by our society. Questions like, oh, he's still breastfeeding, or, oh, when are you going to wean them? It could be influenced by a second pregnancy and not necessarily wanting to continue breastfeeding through pregnancy. It could be influenced by the return of menstruation and many more factors. It really is an individual journey, and it is a decision that only you can make. So when can you wean? This is entirely up to you. The World Health Organization recommends breastfeeding up to 2 years and beyond, or when baby is ready to wean. And the global average age of weaning is actually 4, which might be mind-blowing for some, depending on where you are, because this typically isn't what we see a lot of. And that's okay, because these are just recommendations. They don't work for everyone. There are many people who want to wean much earlier than this. Only you can make the decision when to wean your baby and how you want to do it. Let's talk a little bit about parent-led weaning versus baby-led weaning. So in a parent-led weaning approach, you are actively weaning your baby. You've made the decision, you are setting boundaries, your baby is not feeding as often because you are actively weaning them. This can be a faster process than baby-led weaning, and this doesn't always mean that it's when your baby is ready. And this is where also some big emotions can come up that we're going to talk about. Baby-led weaning can take much longer, and this is because we're letting them lead the way. They are making the decisions. We're letting them self-wean, which, they are gradually reducing the intake of their breast milk, and this might begin somewhere around 18 months or a little bit older than 18 months. So when we let baby lead, this is often when children will nurse until 2 years and beyond. So how would you actually know if your baby is ready to wean? As I mentioned, babies under 18 months do not typically self-wean. If we see a baby under 18 months not wanting to go to breast or refusing or having challenges, this is usually considered to be a nursing strike. And this can happen for a number of reasons. Your baby could be teething, cutting more teeth. This can be really painful and uncomfortable. They want to go to the breast for that soothing and that pain relief. They could be going through a sleep progression, these big developmental milestones. They could be physically uncomfortable in certain positions at your body. There might be changes in your supply, and those fluctuations could be frustrating baby. So there could be a number of reasons that they are having what we're calling a nursing strike and not wanting to be at breast. But there are also some babies who do gradually nurse less as they get older. You might notice your 15, 16, 17-month-old nursing a little bit less often. You may find the opposite. You may find that some of them are nursing even more. Unless you completely let your baby wean, so following that baby-led approach, your approach to weaning will need to be mother-led, but respectful of your baby. When we're talking about weaning, everyone wants to know a timeline. So how fast should you wean? It's ideal that the slower the better. This is not a linear process, and we're going to talk about why. The gentle weaning process can actually take a few weeks to a few months, but slow and steady is ideal for preventing plugged ducts, preventing mastitis, and it actually supports the emotional process for both of you, as well as your hormones, because those fluctuate again as you wean, and a very slow, gradual process can be really supportive of this. But what if you're ready to wean and your baby is not? That's okay. You can still wean your baby. Remember, it's your decision and your decision alone. Babies under 12 months old do need to have formula to replace breast milk. This is the current recommendations from the CDC, the Canadian Pediatric Society, but this also depends on your baby. It depends how close to 12 months they are, how much breast milk they currently consume, how much solids they currently consume. So this is just a guideline to keep in mind depending on the age of your baby when you're weaning them. One thing that comes up a lot is someone looking to wean because their baby is waking so frequently at night. But weaning does not guarantee your baby will no longer wake at night. Babies need nighttime feedings. They are going through huge periods of growth. There are many growth spurts in that first year of their life. And this is the time when they need that nutrition. They need those extra calories. So that's definitely a reason that they're going to want to feed at night. Teething is another reason that many babies may actually want to feed more often at night. Teething causes some pain and discomfort for baby, and breastfeeding is actually a natural pain relief. As soon as baby's latched onto breast, oxytocin is flowing, and that oxytocin is actually a natural pain reliever. Babies might want to feed at night for comfort and closeness, depending on what their connection to you during the daytime is like. They may also want to be feeding at night because they're in discomfort. So again, teething or something else that's going on. The longer you continue to provide breast milk for your baby, the more support you actually offer their immune system. As babies get older, they get more mobile, they're crawling around, they're putting things into their mouth, and your milk actually continues to provide them antibodies to support their immune system through this process. If you are considering night weaning, you do need to address the reason for their waking first. So are they teething and they need some pain relief? Are they actually hungry? Are they just seeking connection and comfort? We want to think about these things when we think about night weaning because, again, it's not going to guarantee that baby is not going to wake anymore. So night weaning in general, it's not based on baby's weight. There's a lot of information out there that says once baby reaches some arbitrary number, they don't need night feedings anymore. And that's simply not true. Infants under 12 months old generally need night feedings. They need those extra calories and that nutrition, especially those busy babies, those babies who are 8 to 10 months old, who are starting to figure out crawling and cruising and maybe walking. They have things to do. They've got places to go and things to see. And often their nursing sessions are a lot shorter. They might be very distracted. And generally they make up for those calories at nighttime. Toddlers also will still want to feed at night. Again, nutritionally, these night feeds are still beneficial to them. It depends how much solids they're consuming. It also depends on why they want to have that feeding. But know that if your baby is waking at night to feed, this is completely normal. When you want to begin the night weaning process, we want to think about the main reason baby is waking. So is that teething pain? Do they just need comfort, etc.? And support those needs as we're slowly removing nursing from nighttime. So a few ways that you can do this is to offer your comfort, snuggle baby, cuddle them, pick them up, rock them, whatever they need from you to get that comfort. You can also offer a drink of water in place of having a nursing session. You can provide your baby an open cup or a straw cup, wherever they're at developmentally, whatever they're drinking from. But you can definitely provide them a drink of water because we also want to think about the fact that breastfeeding quenches thirst in addition to hunger. You can also gradually reduce the frequency of feedings. So for example, you can set a boundary that says, from when they go to bed before midnight, we're going to try these other measures. We're going to, offer a drink of water. We're going to comfort in another way, and then we're just going to breastfeed after midnight onwards. So it provides you a little bit of a break, and it's a very gentle process for your baby. Depending on your baby's age, you could also eliminate a nighttime feeding one at a time. Think about which feeding might feel easiest for you, which feeding you're noticing baby maybe isn't really swallowing a lot of milk at, and you can select that feeding to try and eliminate completely. But again, night weaning is not going to prevent your baby from waking, especially when those molars come in and you have a toddler. So it can still provide you some relief, a break, if you just need that time off at nighttime to not wean, but we do expect baby to be waking for other reasons. So some general tips when you're starting to wean, and you can use these at any point in your journey. This can be for daytime weaning. You can take some of these and incorporate them into nighttime weaning. But generally, weaning an infant who is older than 12 months, you can start by dropping one feeding a week. So for example, you drop just the morning feeding for an entire week. We see how that goes before we start to take away another feeding. So really pick the feeding that's easiest for you. And one example, this doesn't apply to everyone, but one option is baby wakes up in the morning. Instead of having a nursing session first thing, baby just goes straight to breakfast. So that is one way to eliminate one feeding. You would do that for about 7 days, see how baby's feeling, how you're feeling, and go from there. You can also set boundaries. So for example, we only breastfeed in this chair. We only breastfeed while mommy sings a song. What this does is it can shorten the length of time you're feeding your baby, especially when you pick a boundary that includes a time frame on it, like a duration of a song. So rather than removing a feeding, you're shortening the feeding. You're also setting that boundary so that your child knows we're not breastfeeding anywhere, anytime. This is the space that we're going to feed in. This does work well when you have an older child so that you can explain this to them. You can also offer a distraction technique. So have a snack instead, or offer them a drink of water instead. Here's a toy to play with, or let's play this game, change the scenery, take them to a new room, do something else. This is an option. So all of these are just options. You may find that one works exceptionally well for you. You may find you have to go through all of them. It's really going to depend on your journey and your baby. So if you try one of these things and it's not working, don't be discouraged. You can try another technique, go back to something else. Weaning is not always a linear process. A few other ideas for weaning a baby beyond 12 months is to hold space for their emotions. Expect them to be upset. As I mentioned, babies under 18 months don't typically self-wean. So when you start removing a nursing session, they might get upset because we know that babies want to be at the breast for so many reasons beyond food and nutrition. They want to be there for comfort and connection and that safety. So we do want to ensure that we're filling their cup during the day. We're providing them all of those cuddles and hugs and kisses and snuggles so that they get that connection with us. But expect them to not always be happy about the situation. When baby has daytime naps, if they're still napping during the day, this is something else you can even do before bedtime routine, but you can layer in new things before they go to sleep. So if your bedtime routine or your sleeping routine includes something like a change of clothes, a new diaper, a book, and then nursing, you could add something else in before you're taking away the nursing. So adding another book, here's a drink of water instead. We're going to sing another song. We're going to do something else to provide that comfort, connection, and that closeness if we're removing a breastfeeding session. Expect it to take time. The gradual weaning process can take up to a few months. It is not a linear process. So if your baby is teething, if they get sick, if they're upset, hurt, breastfeeding provides comfort and they may want to go back to the breast. It's very likely they will. And just know that this is part of the process. You can continue on the next day. It does not mean that you're going to be unable to wean your baby. We want to hold space for their emotions and be respectful of them as well throughout this whole process. If you want to wean your baby and they're under 12 months old, as I mentioned, formula needs to take the place of breast milk until they are 12 months old, as per the World Health Organization, the CDC, and the Canadian Pediatric Society. You can do this by slowly introducing formula, especially if your baby's never had it. We don't want to introduce large amounts all at once, about an ounce at a time, and you can provide this in an open cup or bottles if your baby has been taking bottles on the regular. But I will add, this would be a situation where I would encourage you to connect one-on-one with a lactation consultant, because it depends. It depends how close your baby is to 12 months, how solids are incorporated in their diet, how much solids do they eat, to really determine if, if we need to bring in formula, especially if your baby has never had it before. So again, these are general recommendations for when your baby is under 12 months old. You can use a lot of the other techniques I mentioned as well, especially for nighttime feedings. So what about weaning from pumping? This can be done a few different ways. One way to do it is to actually just shorten the session by about 2 to 3 minutes, and then continue shortening them every 48 hours. So you can shorten every single pump session in a day, depending on how frequently you're pumping, by about 2 to 3 minutes. But we don't want to shorten them by huge numbers, by 5 or 10 minutes. We want to do it slowly, because the weaning process is slowly telling your body to stop making milk. So we want this to be very gradual. And with pumping, we want to kind of check in about every 48 hours and then adjust it again by only 2 to 3 minutes, and continue going from there until you've removed a pumping session. The other option that you have is replacing a pumping session with hand expression instead. So you could think about whatever session is sort of easiest to switch to hand expression. The way that lactation works is the hormone responsible for milk making rises overnight and starts to naturally decline during the day. So we often find those afternoon, late evening hours is when our supply feels a little bit lower. We notice more softness in our breasts. And this may be a time where you can actually use hand expression to remove milk instead of a pumping session. You also have the option to eliminate one session right away. I just would really encourage you to monitor yourself, meaning monitor for any areas of firmness. There is the potential for an increased risk of plugged ducts and mastitis as soon as we start eliminating milk removals, but just monitor and continue to remove a session every 3 to 5 days. So again, it's a really gradual process. We're not just deciding, we're not pumping anymore today, or I'm only pumping twice today when I usually pump 5 times. We want to do it slowly, because we also want to be respectful of your body and the natural process of lactation. When you are weaning and when someone is slowly reducing their milk supply, I get asked a lot, how do I know if my milk is still there? And many people are eager to sort of check in with their bodies and do a little bit of hand expression just to see if milk comes out. But I would actually say this isn't a good idea. The reason is it takes a minimum of 40 days for those milk producing cells to actually die off. And this is just an average. There are many people who can actually express some milk months after they've weaned. So this is just an average. It's different for every person. But by you hand expressing or pumping just to check in with your body, that's stimulation. Your body is getting the feedback of, oh, there's a baby here that we have to feed. So your body will then continue lactating. So we want to, ideally, we want to reduce and then stop lactation when we're weaning. So I would encourage you to refrain from checking in with yourself in that way. Something we haven't talked about yet is that there are big emotions for both of you, and this is very normal, but you may feel these emotions in a way that you weren't expecting. You may actually feel post-weaning depression. And let's talk about that. What is post-weaning depression? So I'm going to cover it really briefly so that you have an understanding of what it is. Post-weaning depression is feelings of sadness, irritability, feeling tearful or depressed after weaning. So you may start to notice this as pumping sessions or nursing sessions start to decrease. You may notice this more after you are no longer removing milk at all. It is thought that this happens because of the shift in hormones and the reduction in prolactin, which is that milk-making hormone, and oxytocin, which is released when your milk starts flowing. And these hormones are not flowing after the weaning process. So it's thought that the drop in these hormone levels is what leads to this post-weaning depression. Post-weaning depression is not postpartum depression, and not everyone will experience this. And some will, some won't. The more gradual the weaning process, the less likely you are to experience these emotions, but they are definitely still emotions that can come up. So know that it's part of the process. It's not that you've done anything wrong. It is your body is adapting to a new stage in your relationship with your baby. So a few final thoughts for you. The more gradual you can make the weaning process, the easier it might be emotionally for both of you. Remember that weaning is not a linear process. One day, your baby might not spend a lot of time at breast, then they might cut some teeth, they might get sick, and they want to be with you 24/7. So know that it's normal. Know that it can take some time. And it's okay to hold boundaries. This is your journey. Your journey shouldn't look like anyone else's. You get to make the decisions that feel best for you and your baby. And it is okay to hold boundaries and say, this is when we are going to feed, or this is how long I'm going to pump for, and make the decisions that feel best for you. And finally, there are many ways to wean, as we've went through today. It's important that you do what works best for you.